Hello and welcome back to my channel where I like to have fun with all things beauty while being critical about what I accept into my collection. Today I am doing a Pat McGrath Will I Buy It and Can I Dupe It video. So this is the third time I believe I've talked about this palette so far since it was announced, and I have to say I don't have the strongest feelings about this one because unlike previous motherships, either I fell in love and just knew that without question I was just going to buy it, or like the past few years that have been more and more underwhelming. The last mothership that came out 2 years ago, Sunlit Seduction, was the first one that I ever skipped because the quality was so below even the most recent mothership, Mothership X, which was missing those special shades, the Baked Blitz Astral shades. Mothership X didn't have that, but it was still arguably unique and pretty. So that was around the time that I started pausing before purchasing. And I know I'm not alone. I know a lot of people feel the exact same way. But I also think I'm not alone in wanting it to change. Like being disappointed, being critical of the brand, but missing that excitement that we all used to get from the mothership release every year. Not that I need to be spending $130 on one single palette, but I was okay with it because it was only once a year. Unlike other brands that maybe at a slightly more palatable price point come out with a palette every month or every 3 months or whatever it is. I liked this yearly release a lot more, but it is still $128, and I think you would have a difficult time finding anybody who can look at this color story and say genuinely that it is unique. It's unique for the lineup. When I was doing my dupe swatches today, I feel like I at least confirmed that. I confirmed that it wasn't an easy palette to dupe just with my motherships. However, it took almost no effort at all for me to reach into like 3 other palettes in my collection and easily get the shades that I wasn't able to dupe in Pat McGrath. And I know I have a pretty large collection, but like we're talking about green and purple. There's a lot of green and purple eyeshadow out there. So the color story is not unique. When you move on to the quality, I really believe with my whole heart that even 5 years ago, you could make a solid argument that her formula was head and shoulders above even some of the other expensive palettes we have out there. However, I don't think that's the case anymore for any of the mattes and standard shimmers or satins. The one formula by Pat McGrath Labs that is, to this day, untouchable is that special baked Blitz Astral formula, and like I talked about in my last video, they might call them Blitz or Astral shades, but they're not. The formula is different, and I am starting to think that that's it, that we're not going to get that formula again. And I don't know if it has something to do with the lab, the ingredient restrictions in Europe. Like I do know that that just happened. I don't know of any other brand's formula being affected, but I don't know. That could explain some of it. I mean, it's probably money. We all saw that article that came out a few weeks ago talking about Pat McGrath Labs having to lay people off because they're really not doing well. If that's the case, they may not have the money to put towards the baked formula because they have to be processed differently, and I know it costs more money. One thing that I wanted to add about the topic of formula changes is somebody had asked me if they right now went onto the Pat McGrath website and purchased one of the previous 8 motherships that contain the special baked formula, if those palettes do still contain that formula. And as far as I can tell, yes, they do. That those palettes haven't been touched. That is the original formula. All of my palettes are older than the past 4 years or so, so I'm just going off of sort of doing a deep dive on Reddit and seeing, because I figured honestly, if that were to happen, if they were to sell those older palettes with a different formula, people would be up in arms. I definitely think that would be on Reddit. So because I didn't see anything about that over there, I'm fairly certain that that's not the case. Now that doesn't mean they're not just selling older stock, and they could eventually change if they're changing something about the manufacturing process. But I would say as of today at least, it is perfectly safe to go ahead and purchase one of the older motherships or one of the quads. I know that they have a number of quads that contain Blitz Astrals as well. So the only mothership from 1 to 9 that doesn't contain that formula is Decadence. The rest of them have it, and a number of the older quads in the older packaging. I'm actually keeping an eye on those myself because I only have 3 of those quads, and if that's the only way I can get that formula, I feel like if the price is right, I'll definitely snatch it up. And if anyone knows anything different or more on this subject, please drop a comment because I know a lot of people would appreciate that. It could be that simple. It could have nothing to do with any of those other excuses, and it could be just a way for them to cut costs. However, I am beyond disappointed if that is the case, because that was the one thing that kept me going back to Pat. Color stories come and go. If I don't like this one, I might like the next one. So I don't care as much about the color story, although I will say I was definitely sick of pink and gold. I care more about the formula, and if you take away that baked shade, I can't justify the price anymore. But we all know that logic is not the only factor in our decision to buy these palettes or not. So despite knowing that I should wait, am I going to buy this palette at launch? I would say I'm leaning 98% towards yes if I can get the limited edition packaging. If I can't get the purple packaging, I'm going to do my best to wait to pick it up at the Sephora sale because I've already checked. We know it is going to be available in Sephora, and the Sephora sale starts on April 4th, so 2 weeks. If you want to wait and get the palette at a discount, you just have to wait 2 weeks. That's it. And then you can buy it at Sephora. And actually, the Sephora shipping is very good, especially during this sale. So you might even get it faster than buying it directly from Pat McGrath Labs itself. It's a tough one because is purple plastic really worth $25.60 or almost $26? No, it's not. That's crazy. However, I know that I have done crazier things in my life than spend $26 for plastic. So I will be doing that. What I have a harder time justifying is paying the extra $26 for the regular old black Mothership packaging that blends in and makes the palettes really hard to distinguish one from another. I have a harder time justifying that. My assumption is that the purple packaging will most definitely sell out, and it's funny because even Morgan Turner pointed out that this palette actually looks better with a black background. When you put the colors against the purple background, it just doesn't hit the same. It actually is way more flattering in the standard packaging. So for that reason, if I don't get one of the purple palettes, I won't be heartbroken. I'll feel like that was the universe making a better decision for me, despite myself. But I'm not gonna lie, I'm still gonna try. I'm still gonna try to get it, even though we are once again going without that special baked formula. Now, from everything that happened after Mothership XI, which was arguably an epic fail. I mean, I didn't hear a single person say that that was a good palette. Because that did so poorly, I'm expecting the formula to be better than that. I don't think it'll be like Mothership XI. I'm expecting it to be like Mothership X, which is decent. I mean, these 4 shades in the corner, even though they're not baked Blitz Astrals, they're not bad. And I think one of the things that helped save this was how pretty the duochrome shade in this palette is. It's not revolutionary. It's not a duochrome that you can't find anywhere else, but it is really well done, and I've always loved the looks that I've done when I've used this palette. When I first saw the photos that were leaked of Mothership XII, I did have hope that we would have 1 or 2 duochromes, whether it be the green shade or the purple shade. I thought at least one of them might be a duochrome. That does not look to be the case. I would say most definitely not, now that we have better swatches. I mean, even in the official marketing swatches, which I've never found to be very useful with Pat McGrath, even there you can tell that none of these are duochrome, or if they are, not in a noticeable way. And I think it's important to distinguish that because I know I've had eyeshadows in the past, which yeah, when they're technically duochromes, fine, but if you can't see it on the eyes, even on a curved surface, they don't count in my book. A final thought I wanted to include about people's general excitement about these palettes definitely has to do with the brand itself. Who's ever running their customer service department has left a lot to be desired over the years. I know I personally never really had to deal with them, but I heard the horror stories. Like, they just weren't that nice. They were rude and reluctant to help, but I think what really crossed the line for a lot of people is pretty recently, actually. The debacle with the Star Wars palette where they just slapped a sticker over Mothership VI, and when Monica Bell over on Instagram exposed them for that, the way they treated her was atrocious. Blocking her and blocking anybody who commented anything even remotely negative. Like, who's ever running customer service as well as social media is giving the brand a pretty bad reputation, combined with more recent developments that we've heard from ex-employees about the workplace itself being toxic. So, needless to say, it's left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth. And I don't think anybody holds Pat McGrath responsible for that. She's a pretty private person. We don't know a lot about how involved she is. And as things have gone steadily downhill, people assume less and less. All of which became more relevant when we found out that she's been working for Louis Vuitton for the past 2 years. I think a lot of people have just given up, thinking that there's any real magic behind this brand when you remove Pat McGrath and you combine it with some nasty customer service. You're gonna lose a lot of loyal fans, and these are people that buy every release. I don't believe makeup is merch. I don't believe in collecting full collections of makeup, but when a brand does something like only have one big eyeshadow release, I think it's okay to collect something like that. I don't think it makes sense for the average consumer to buy entire holiday releases or go crazy for that kind of stuff. But one palette a year, I don't think that that's too much, and a lot of people did that, myself included. But seeing what happened to Monica is one of the things that helped me not buy Mothership XI, and it's helping encourage me to be more rational about this purchase as well. So I just wanted to take a minute and acknowledge that. And now we'll jump back into the video. Alright, so now that I've gone on at length about my disappointment in the formula, and the fact that I'm probably going to pick it up despite the reasons not to get it outweighing the reasons to get it, especially since we're probably not even going to get the 10% off early access discount like we used to in the good old days. Despite all of that, was I able to dupe the palette with my Pat McGrath collection as it is? So the short answer is no, not really, but I definitely did try, and I actually had fun. I had fun going through all of my old eyeshadow palettes today. I will admit I haven't touched them in a long time, so it was a good exercise, a walk down memory lane, reminding me of all the things that I used to like about the brand, and it was fun. You know, what I would do is I would put the swatches on my inner arm, but to pick each color, I would put them on the back of my hand first, and I would hold my phone with the swatches next to my hand over my collection and go palette by palette to get the best match. The way I'm going to go about showing how I picked all of the shades for these dupes is I'm just going to pop on the screen the shade from the Mothership palette that I took it from with me just pointing to it, because quite frankly, even attempting to talk shade names would be an enormous undertaking, and I don't think it would be helpful because I don't know anyone who uses Pat McGrath and references their shade name, so I'll just show me pointing to it. And I made sure that in all of my photos you can see the full palette so you can see which Mothership it is. That's another thing that is confusing with Pat McGrath palettes. They all look the same, and the older palettes don't have anything on them to indicate what number Mothership they are. The newer ones do. Like when I look at my Mothership X, and even Utopian Dream has it. So I don't know when they started including a sticker that actually identifies the palette, or maybe my stickers just fell off. I'm not sure what happened there, but regardless, it's confusing. So I won't attempt that. I'll get myself confused. I'll just show the picture of the palette to keep it simple. I'm going to do these in the same order as the video on her website. So I didn't use her marketing swatches. I used the live swatches. I took screen grabs from the video on her website because I think those are the most realistic swatches that we have right now. They're the thickest, they're the easiest to see. So I did my best to get decent images of those, and I just saved them to my phone and I went swatch by swatch that way. So how they're on the arm in the photo here is how I did my swatches. So enough rambling, let's get into it. I started with Divine Dawn, the top left. What's interesting is I see that this is not called Skin anything. I'm fairly certain in all of her other palettes, they're all called Skin something, which is kind of weird, so I don't mind them changing that. But anyway, I took this shade from Mothership X, and I know that the shade in Mothership 12 has more of a pink tinge to it in the pan, but in the swatch it looks fairly light. So it was a good enough match. I don't really think you'd be able to see too much of a difference there. Next, the shade below it, Nocturnal Bloom, that's the dark blue-green matte. That's probably one of the most unique shades that we're looking at in this palette. Although I did want to pop up a photo from the marketing pictures that I noticed that show that it could be almost black. So I chose this blue shade from Decadence, but I do feel like I could have used, there's at least 3 matte blacks in her Mothership palettes. I think I could have used any of those. The black is actually what I used on my eyes today. I didn't go with this deep blue for the outer corner. I went with black because I have a feeling it's going to mostly translate as that on the eyes, but you know, we'll see. Next, Twilight Lilac, the purple shade. I used this purple from one of the holiday palettes that was pretty close, not too far off. So now we get to the pale purple, so the Astral Iridescent Iris shade. There was definitely no dupe for that in the entire Pat McGrath collection that I had. There was one of the mega holiday palettes that had pale purple in it, but the undertone was so different that it just really didn't work as a dupe for that. So instead I went with the purple from Utopian Dream. That's quite a standout shade. Obviously there's a lot of blue reflect. It's like a blue purple undertone that is pretty prominent, so it's not a good dupe for this, but when I was just looking at my Pat McGrath collection, it was sort of the best that I could do. I definitely tried other ones. There are some paler shimmers with different reflex in them, but they were all duochrome and they either shifted pink, blue, or gold, so just none of them really worked out. That purple shade really wound up being the best fit. Next up, we have Cosmic Fantasies in the middle top row, and that just sort of looks like your standard mauve shimmer. So I found a holiday palette that had something similar, so that's what I used for that one. Next up, we have below that Lunar Nectar. Now, this one looks like it might be one of those where it's matte with sparkles in it. I'm not a fan of that from any brand. I feel like when they start putting random sparkles in a matte, it's just kind of useless. It's not something that I've ever felt added anything. If anything, it renders the matte somewhat unusable sometimes, depending on the formulation. So I don't expect that to happen here. She did this in one of her holiday palettes and it was fine. I was able to use it as if it didn't have any shimmer at all. But still, that's definitely not my preference. So I'm hoping that that's not the case, but we'll see. Regardless, I just use a standard matte. Again, this is from Utopian Dream. That pink shade seemed to be the closest match. Now we get to some of the more exciting colors. So we have this really pretty chartreuse Astral Eden Envy on the top right. And you know, it's funny because in this photo, in this palette, that color does not look like it is that similar. That color looks so much more yellow than the one from Mothership 12, but in swatches, it's actually extraordinarily similar. So I was really happy to see that because I think that's a cool color and I'm going to try to play with that sometime in the next few days. But I was worried about getting a good match for that, and I actually think that this is pretty dead on. Now we come to the infamous green shade, which is not that unique. It's unique for Pat McGrath, but it's not a unique shade by any means. Because it's unique for the brand, I just took the only green that was even remotely similar. And in this palette, it has a black base. In the pan, it looks like it might be a lighter green. On the skin, it is a lot darker. So I don't think that the green in Mothership 12 has a dark base at all. It looks very true to the tone. There's no mystery. That's another thing about this palette, is it kind of looks like what you see is what you get. My biggest thing with Motherships is I don't know how they're going to look on my skin until I put them on my skin. It always amazes me how much they can change based on their shifts or their base colors or even skin tone to skin tone. I know every eyeshadow changes depending on the skin tone you put it on, but I don't really feel like any brand is quite as full of surprises as this one. And I don't feel like that's really true of Mothership 12. I feel like I know what I'm looking at and I'm not expecting any surprises here. But regardless, as you can see, this is not a really good dupe. I decided, sort of based on this, that at the end I was going to grab like 4 or 5 other palettes just randomly from my collection and do dupes for some of those colors. I didn't take the time to dupe every single one, but I did include the ones where I just felt like the selection that I had didn't match up well enough to sort of show how easy it would be to do that if you have more than just Pat McGrath eyeshadows. Now we have Astral Sunset Splendor on the top right of Mothership 12, and you know, it's interesting because this one does look different across the marketing, but in the swatch it looks very peach. So that's why I selected the shade I did, even though the shade I picked doesn't really have any glitter in it. It did seem to be the best color match. Finally, we have Blitz Bronze Supernova, the bottom right. This was sort of tough only because there was a lot to choose from. Pat McGrath has a lot of brown leaning shimmers, so I had to swatch a bunch to pick the one that had the right undertone, but I decided to go with this one from Divine Rose. I don't know, maybe I could have picked a better one, but it seemed like kind of good enough, that kind of thing. And that is it. That is the lineup that I wound up going with. And while I don't think it's bad, I don't think it's the best palette that I've ever duped. I think I've definitely done better in the past, and I don't think I would be happy to use the dupe. I don't think that this is going to be my new favorite palette in the whole world, but I do think I'm going to like it better than the shades that I duped, which is a good thing. All right, so now real quick, I'm going to throw up the indie palettes that I pulled to see if I could get better shade matches. The first one was the Corner Matte shade. That was to dupe the blue-green, sort of navy leaning, almost black color from Mothership 12, and that was that corner color there. And to dupe the purple, I picked the purple on the far right from Gourmand Girls Haunted. For the green, I grabbed my Nomad Cosmetics Ireland palette, and I mean, there was plenty to choose from, but I picked that one in the middle. And finally, to dupe some of the mattes, just because I have it, I pulled from the Dragon Eye palette. I will say the Dragon Eye palette looks more and more different the more photos we see of Mothership 12. It definitely has the same vibes. It like gives the same energy, but the Dragon Eye palette is full of like 7 really stunning multichromes. So I would say in a lot of ways, the Dragon Eye palette is prettier. Actually, if I get this palette, I'll definitely compare the two, but I don't think they're going to be actually that similar beyond the matte shades. And finally, I will end tonight's video with the eye look I did today. I sort of wanted to go with the purple and green theme because I think that's the most fun, but I gotta be honest, I don't really love the look that I did. I think I could have done something better, but I kind of just ran out of time. I really wanted to get this video up and out before the palette launched, and I didn't get the idea until today. So I did the swatches this morning, and now I'm filming this tonight. It's almost midnight, so I'm definitely going to do my best to edit between now and tomorrow morning to get this up on the 19th so that you can see it before the 20th. If you're really on the fence about this and want to see kind of an example of other options that you might have in your collection already. So I do really hope that was helpful. I feel like on one hand, I am going directly against my best advice because I am buying this palette even though I don't think it's special. I think without the Blitz Astrals, it's not actually worth it. And if I had patience, I would wait at least for the Sephora sale, 20% off. Otherwise, definitely Pat McGrath on Black Friday. They have so many sales, I could get maybe even 30% off if I waited for that. So I don't feel great about this purchase, but I know I'm probably going to make it anyway. And unlike the Natasha Denona Bloom palette, which was a disaster like all the way around, I really, really dislike that palette. It might be my worst purchase of 2025. I know I'm not going to hate this. I know at the very least I'm going to like it. I may not love it, but I know for a fact that I'm gonna like it. I can still say that about Pat McGrath. It may not be blowing my mind. I may still have a lot of critiques. I want more transparency. I want more from the brand in general. But regardless, I know I'm not gonna hate it, so it's not the worst purchase I'm gonna make this year. That's for sure. It's probably gonna be dead center, like right in the middle. So I don't think I'm gonna regret buying it. I think I'm gonna regret paying full price. If I do pay full price to get the purple, I think I might regret that, but I'm not going to regret the purchase as a whole. So that's kind of why I'm just letting myself have this one. I don't know. I mean, I try to do these videos because I want to help people make rational decisions. Sometimes I go against my own rational decisions, and this is kind of that happening in real time. But I did these swatches. I thought this was interesting and fun, so I figured I'd let other people take a look, and I'm hoping that my next review is going to be the new Nomad, the Fairy Tale Europe palette. I should have actually filmed that today, but I'm not gonna lie, I got caught up in the Pat McGrath of it all. Despite everything, my brain just kind of like gravitates towards any release from them. It's like I have to at least look, and maybe no one else cares, but in case they do, this video is for you. Anyway, I definitely need to stop talking so that I can start editing. I hope that you're having a beautiful day or night wherever you are. I hope you're taking care of yourself. I love you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.